Hello, this is Nick Perna. I'm going to be presenting a tutorial today on PIC-SKATE Inline Skates. I'm going to be doing a little bit of history of the skates, and then I'll be also talking about transitioning from ice figure skates to the PIC-SKATE Inline Figure Skate. Now, inline figure skates actually go back quite a ways. They started skating on inline skates back in the 1600s as a way to take their ice skating skills from frozen ponds and canals. In the summertime, they wanted to skate like they did on ice skates. So people were strapping on wooden frames with spools of thread without the thread on them, on pieces of wood, and they would try to skate like that on wooden floors, and didn't work very well because they really couldn't control their stopping, and they couldn't control turns very well because they didn't really have edges with the wooden spools. So inline skating actually predates roller skating on quad skates. They found out once they put the wheels side by side like a regular roller skate has, that they could steer them better and they could stop better. They put toe stops on the front, and that's how they ended up being able to stop and turn and do jumps and spins with them. So inline skates kind of went by the wayside during that time. And it wasn't until many, many years later when they started realizing they could use rubber wheels and urethane wheels instead of wooden wheels and steel wheels that the inline skates made a comeback. And rollerblade brought out the very common recreational skate back in the late 80s as a hockey skate alternative for dryland training in hockey skates. And a lot of hockey players used them back then because they actually had wheels that would grip and they could do edges on them with the urethane. So that's what made edging possible really on inline skates, was the invention of the urethane wheel, which you see right here. And you can see that it actually has inside and outside leaning just like a bicycle tire would. You can get that same feel of a curve and an edge on this wheel. About that time that rollerblade came out with their hockey skates, I had been trying them out and skating them in them, and I really liked them. I felt like they were a lot like my ice skates, my ice figure skates, except they didn't have a toe pick on them. They also weren't rockered like my figure skates were. They were more or less flat. So I took different size wheels. I put bigger wheels in the middle, and I put smaller wheels on the ends, and I had a rocker. So I could do turns and things on that much easier than I could on a frame that was straight across like the rollerblades were initially. But I still was missing that toe pick. So I took off the front wheel of my rollerblades, and I took a hockey puck, which was just about the right width to fit in there, and I trimmed it down so it was the right size. And I basically had this big chunk of black rubber on the front of my skates. I screwed it in with some screws so it was nice and tight, and I used that as my toe pick. So I turned my rollerblade hockey skates essentially into a figure skate by putting on the toe pick and rockering the wheels. And it worked really well. I could jump, I could spin, I could do all my turns on them. Felt very much like an ice figure skate. So I started thinking, well, wow, this could really be something. I could just make ice figure skates. Let's see if somebody would be interested. So I checked with a few companies, including Rollerblade, and they didn't want anything to do with an ice figure skate or an inline figure skate. So I started looking at making them myself, and that's when I met up with John Patel, who now is the president of the PIC-SKATE company. And John Patel at the time was working on a toe stop for a regular rollerblade, which was a big piece of rubber that turned very slowly and gradually so you could come to a gradual stop, and he called it roller stop. And it was a nice idea for stopping on inline skates instead of using a heel stop. But I told him I thought that we could modify that design and actually make an inline figure skate, and he was behind it. He liked the idea. So we started working together, and we patented the pick frame skate shortly thereafter. And that was an inline skate that attached to a figure skating boot. It looks like this, and it has a toe pick on the front that's solid rubber, and then the urethane wheels, 4 of them here on my skate, and they're rockered from front to back like a skating blade. Now, one of the critical areas on an inline figure skate is this area between the front wheel and the toe pick. If this angle of attack right to the ground isn't correct, it's much harder to spin on them, and then also much harder to skate. If it's too low, you'll start to trip over the toe pick, and you won't be able to do turns very easily. And if it's too high, it's way out of the way, and you can't get on to the toe pick for proper jump technique and landing technique and spin technique. So this angle is very important, and this is one of the areas of design that we really have to work on to get the pick skate to work properly. But basically you have a toe pick that doesn't move, it's fastened in place, and then 3 or 4 wheels depending on which frame you get. Now the pick skate frame comes in many different models, but I will tell you all, a lot of people stress over which model frame to get, and the real answer is they're all basically the same. When you're paying the higher prices for the higher levels of frame, you're just basically paying for cosmetic changes. Shiny, polished finish, higher ratings for the bearings, things like that. But basically the satin frames, the black frames, the lower level frames, they're all structurally the same, and they all are performance-wise, they work the same. So don't worry about which frame you can get. Get one of the proper size, that's the most important. Now sizing, it depends on the length of your boot. My boot here takes a 10¼ inch blade, and you can see it's set in about a little past 1/4 inch, almost a 1/2 inch from the heel, and this is a 10¼ inch pick skate frame. So I use the same size frame as I do ice blades. So if you have a 10-inch blade on your skates, you would probably want to use a 10-inch pick skate frame, okay? You might be able to go a little bit smaller, a little bit longer. I could have probably gone a little longer on this, but this is the right size for this frame. In fact, the pick skate was designed for my boot many, many years ago. And I have a 4-wheel skate. I like the 4th wheel sticking out a little bit, just like the skate blade does on a figure skate. You can go with a 3-wheel skate. We used to only make 3-wheel skates for children. Now they make a 3-wheel skate for adults as well. And that puts the 3rd wheel about right here. If the 3rd wheel is too far in like this, if this was an actual 3-wheel frame, that 3rd wheel would be way too far in, and you would be falling off your heel all the time. So you want that 3rd wheel to sit right under this heel or a little bit past it, okay? If it gets too far past the center line this way, it's not good because you'll be falling off your heels, and that's dangerous. So you want this to sit here. I like the 4-wheel skate. I feel like it's easier to do back 3 turns on because you're more on the back wheel back this way, okay? But 3-wheel skates do work. If you get a 4-wheel skate that sticks out way too far, it does give you good balance and steadiness, but it also can get in the way of crossovers. When you're doing back crossovers, you tend to trip on it sometimes, unless you, really practice them and get used to it. So 3 or 4 wheels you can get. The larger size frames only come in 4 wheels, and the smaller ones, some of them come in both 3 and 4. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the wheels themselves. Now if you're ice skating, you really just have one piece of metal attached to the bottom of your skate, and it's got screws in it, and that's all there is to it. You have to get it sharpened, but you don't have a lot of maintenance on it as far as the wheels and pick go. So on a pick skate, you've got a lot more parts. We're going to talk about the wheel. When you get your pick skates, you get 2 of these tools. These are Allen wrenches, and they have a fancy little bearing pusher at the end here that you can use. Now, if you don't have this tool, you can do this with just regular Allen wrenches, but basically you put this in the sides of this, one on each side, and you loosen the bolts. The bolt's going to come out. It's going to look like this. It's going to come out. It's going to unscrew. When you are loosening with the Allen wrenches, it'll unscrew and it'll come off like this. Then you're going to reach in and you're going to pull the wheel out. Now, as you pull the wheel out, you have to be very, very careful because the wheel has two little bearing spacers in it. So I'm pulling the wheel out. It comes out like this, and you can see these two little silver bearing spacers on the outside of the wheel. I'm sorry, these aren't bearing spacers, these are wheel spacers. They come out like this, all right? And they're kind of tricky. They're easy to lose, so be careful you don't lose these because they're important. They take up the space inside the frame when you mount the wheel back in so it doesn't wobble. You don't want wobbling wheels in your skates. So there's one on each side. You pull those out. Make sure you don't drop them. Put those aside. Then you have a wheel like this with two bearings in it. Okay? Now, if you ever have to change, if you want to just rotate your wheels, so if they get worn down, you can move them around so that they can get more wear on them. If you ever have to change your wheels to get new wheels, you have to take these bearings out. And the way you take the bearing out is you take that bearing pusher, you stick it in like this, and you push down on it. And it'll pop the bearing out on the other side. Okay? So when the bearing comes out, you have a bearing and then a bearing spacer, which is this little tube. Okay? So that's what the bearing looks like. And then there's another bearing on the other side. You have to pop that one out as well. Okay? So you pop both those bearings out. When you pop them both out, you have a wheel that looks like that. Two bearings and the bearing spacer in the middle. So this is the part that's hidden inside that wheel. Okay, when you put it all back together. And it goes back together the same way. Put the bearing in the wheel, like that. Push down hard on it. Now it's flush. Put this back in. And push down on that to make sure that the bearing spacer is centered. And then you push down on this bearing too and make that flush. Now your wheel's back together. Then you can put in the two little wheel spacers, those tiny little ones, one on each side. And then you put the wheel back in to the frame and you put the bolt through it. I know that sounds like a lot, but you only have to do that when you're getting new wheels and putting the bearings in your new set of wheels. Now as far as the pick goes, the pick, this is the ball pick. We have two main picks that we use, the P11 ball pick and the P9 power pick. There also was a disc pick that came out in the original PIC-SKATE, and it was a lot like the P9, but it was made of a different material. Now the difference between the P9 and the P11, or the ball pick, is the ball pick has these flanges that wrap around the frame on the corners. So if you look at this skate here, you see how this wraps around the front of the skate? See, it covers the bolt a little bit right here. And that is so that when you're towing in at an angle, you're not hitting the frame, the corner of the frame. Because sometimes on wooden floors, if you towed in too steep, it would actually, the frame would hit. A lot of people like this P9 because it also allows you a little more angle to tow in for jumps and to land jumps. But I personally like the P9 pick a lot as well. And the P9 pick has one advantage over this. For this pick, when it wears down, if you spin outside a lot, you're going to wear down this pick flat almost. And eventually it'll come up to where it almost hits the frame. So the way you do this is you can take this pick off. You take this screw out on one side and this screw out on the other side. You take the bolt out that holds the pick in place. You take the pick off the skate and you flip it over, putting the flat end on top and the round end on the bottom. So this is going to flip completely over, and I have a brand new pick that I can put in there, okay? Because the flat part will be up top now and the round part will be at the bottom, and you have a brand new spot to spin on. So you can get really lot longer use out of your picks if you will take them off and flip them once they get worn down. Now, the advantage of the P9 pick is it's shaped like this. It doesn't have the flanges. So it's basically got that hockey puck style to it. And that allows you to actually rotate the pick. You can take the 2 screws out. You don't have to take the bolt out. You loosen it, and you turn the pick about 1/4 of a turn. And when that gets worn down, you do the same thing again. Turn it another 1/4 turn. Tighten it back up. You can go skate some more. Gets worn down again. You can turn it another 1/4 turn. So you get more turns out of the P9 pick than you do the ball pick. But here's a little hack that we've come up with for the P11 or the ball pick if you want to get more usage out of it. You can cut these flanges off with a sharp knife, like a razor or a box cutter. You can slice these flanges off flush. Now the whole pick will look like this. It won't have these flanges. And you can do the same thing by turning this 1/4 turn each time and get more use out of it. And since the picks are sometimes hard to get, especially now, you can, it might give you a little bit more usage out of your ball picks. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the bearings, what I said. There are all different types of bearings. They go from ABEC 1s to ABEC 9s, which is a rating of how the tolerance of these bearings. But for our use, an ABEC 3, 5, or 7 bearing is fine. You don't need to go to higher end bearings. These bearings were originally made for super high machinery that rotates at hundreds of thousands of RPMs, and we're not anywhere near that when we're skating. So the tolerance level of an ABEC 3 and an ABEC 5, you won't be able to tell the difference. They're all basically the same, so don't worry about that. I'm going to talk now about surfaces. Your surfaces that you want to skate on, the best thing for me to skate on, I love skating on smooth concrete, like a basement floor or a garage floor. I think it has the right combination of grip and hardness and smoothness. So for me, concrete is a really ideal surface. Wooden floors like a roller rink, they're great too. They will not wear your picks down very much or your wheels. They can last for a long, long time skating on wood. You can skate on wooden floors. I have some skaters, some of my students have cleared out their living rooms and have skated on their fine wooden floors in their house, and the picks do not mark them up, and the wheels don't mark them up. And if they do leave a little bit of residue behind, you can always just buff it out with a cloth. Outside, if you're skating on asphalt, the picks will wear down very quickly, especially if you're doing spins and things where it's touching a lot, or turns where you're grinding the toe pick. They will wear down. Try to keep making sure if you are wearing your picks down that you check them to make sure that they're not wearing down too much, or you will start hitting the frame, and that's not good. The other thing you want to keep checking is you want to keep checking your equipment outside, especially. Make sure these are tight but not too tight. When you put the wheels in, they want to be able to spin freely like that. You want to tighten these down to where you feel it really tight, and then back off about 1/8 of a turn or so that the wheel spins freely. You want to check them. If you hear rattling, that usually means one of your bolts is loose. If you don't check these, they actually can fall out sometimes if you haven't checked them, and then you can lose the little spacer parts or even the end of the bolts. All right? So you don't want a wheel falling off when you're skating. Outside, protective gear is very important. I recommend protective gear whenever you're skating on the inline skates. Falling on asphalt is much rougher than falling on ice. You do not slide the same way. The pads are designed with plastic cups on the elbows, knees, and wrist guards, so that when you hit the ground, you actually have a slidability factor. If you were to just wear regular gloves, that would protect you from scrapes a little bit, but that also catches, and it doesn't have that sliding factor. One of the reasons why our falls on ice are not as hard as on asphalt is because of that. the slide dissipates some of that energy, and you don't have that ripping at you and stopping you that quickly. So slidability is important, and that's what the protective gear does. You want to wear a good helmet. The best helmet I've found for inline skating is what the skateboarders use. It's called a ProTech helmet, P-R-O-T-E-C. And those helmets come in different styles, but a basic skateboard type helmet is good for inline skating. Also, if you have the butt pads that a lot of skaters own, wear those when you're skating as well, because sometimes just slipping off your heels and falling straight down is a very hard fall on asphalt. So wearing a butt pad will help that as well. There are some surfaces like sport court, inline hockey rinks sometimes have plasticky surfaces on them. Those are hard to skate on, I find, unless you have the right type of wheels. Wheels come in all different hardnesses and sizes. The ones for the PIC-SKATE, we use 68 millimeter to 72 millimeters will fit in the frame. Anything larger than that doesn't fit. Now this is a 70 millimeter wheel. This is the one the skate was designed for. And they do also make a 68 millimeter Geneva wheel now, which is, most people are using that indoor rinks. You won't be able to tell the difference. It's not that big a deal. As long as you don't go up to 72, I find the 72 millimeter wheels creates too much of an angle to the pick. So 68 to 70 is the best for the PIC-SKATE as far as I'm concerned. The hardness level of the wheels, they come in different durometers, and usually about a 73 durometer, 75 durometer, 78 durometer. Those are all good durometers for inline skating. You don't want to go way too high. They can go up to 85, even higher. But most people find that the durability of the wheel is better in the mid-70s for the durometer. Okay, and also elliptical shape versus round shape. This is an elliptical shape. You see it comes to a little bit of a point here. They also make rounder ones that look more like a motorcycle tire. I like the elliptical shape because I think you can feel your edges a little better on them. But the other kind, the regular rounded shape, works just as well for most people. So don't worry about wheel shape too much. The main thing is getting the skate mounted properly too, so that you have the pick in the right spot. When you mount these skates, you can see how it's not like an ice skate where I would mount this in the center. The frame is going to be on this right here, it's going to bisect the center. So if this was an ice skate blade, it would come right down there. Don't worry too much about left or right. You have a lot more forgiving playroom here with this. So as long as this is pretty much right down the center of the front and of the heel, you'll be fine. The most important part is mounting where the pick is. You can see how the front of the boot, you can see the front of the toe comes pretty much in line with the screw of the pick right here. Not the bolt of the pick, but the screw of the pick. All right, that's pretty much where you want that pick to be placed. You can see it set back just a little bit from my toe. And if you have it too far forward, you're going to have a hard time getting to the toe pick. And if you have it too far back, you'll be getting to the toe pick too soon, and it'll feel like it's tripping you. So put it so that it's right there where that screw is, pretty much in line with the toe of the boot from the side like that. Now you can mount these on your regular ice skate boots if you want, or you can have a dedicated pair just for inline skating. It does use different screw holes. You can see it even has screw holes in here inside the frame. It's a solid plate. So you can use different screw holes. It won't line up with your same blade holes, and that's a good thing, because then you can actually, when it's time to go back on the ice, you can take that PIC-SKATE off and put your regular blades back on if necessary. So we're going to talk a little bit about tips for transitioning. from ice skating to inline figure skating, and it is quite different. You're going to initially feel that it feels so bizarre. It's like it's going to feel alien. You're going to get on the wheels and you're going to say, oh wow, I can go off my heels and the pick's way up here and I can't really feel my edges, but don't worry about all that. Just get on them and do basic skills to start out with. Basic swizzles, forward and backward, basic slaloms so that you can start feeling your edges. You have to be aware that the picks are heavier. Pick skate is heavier than the ice skate by a lot, and it's also a little bit taller. It sits off the ground a little bit further than an ice skate blade does. So that extra height's going to feel strange at first too. But once you get used to edging on them, try basic edges. You're not going to be able to do full circles in them very easily. Just try to do a nice curve like you would half circles. And get used to going forward and backwards. Start doing some back crossovers and some forward crossovers till those feel comfortable. Once those feel comfortable, then you can start learning how to do things like turns. Now, I get a lot of questions about stopping too. When you're stopping on inline skates, you do not want to do hockey stops like you do on the ice, or T-stops like you do on the ice. And you don't want to be dragging your toe picks to stop on the ice either, or on the pick skates, because that's going to wear your picks down a lot. Now, if you're going backwards and you rock up to your toes, you will stop on your picks, and it will stop you. But it also is going to wear those picks down a lot if you're on asphalt. So learn how to do the T-stop on inline skates. And the way you do it, it'll be just like on the ice, except instead of using the edge at an angle to skid like this, you're going to drag the foot. So the wheels will actually be dragging like a bad T-stop. You're going to be dragging that inside edge, and the wheels will drag along the pavement and stop you. And practice this slowly at first and get used to it, okay? You want to have that inside edge dragging like that, okay? And then every time you do this, you'll hit a different spot on the wheels, and it won't wear the wheels down as much as it would if you were stopping on the pick and hitting the same spot every time on the pick. You can also do slalom stops if you're not going too fast. And if you have to stop backwards, you can go up on the toes if you need to. So that's how we stop. Turns are done very much like they are on ice, but you're going to feel like you have to rock way more forward for a forward turn and way further back for a backward turn. So if you're doing a forward outside 3 turn, you're going to be up on the front wheel when you do the actual turn. So start in the middle of the blade, glide into it on an outside edge, rock to the front wheel, turn on the front wheel, and then rock back down to the wheels as you exit. So it's going to be middle of the blade, front wheel, middle of the blade. And you're going to be on the front wheel only as you do the turns, and only on the forward turns. On the backward turns, it's the opposite. You're skating backwards on the middle of the blade, and then you're going to rock to the heel wheel to do the turn, and then the wheels will come back down. So in backward turns, middle, back wheel, and then middle again as you exit. And you do that on all your back turns. Once you get used to doing turns on them, you're ready to start trying to do some jumps. Jumping on the pick skate is very similar to ice. You're going to have to roll through your toe for waltz jump and sow count and loop jump, just like you would on the ice. Edge, toe pick, and up. Make sure you're pushing through the toe and not trying to jump off just the wheels. You'll get a much higher jump and a better secured takeoff if you are going through the toe correctly. When you land a jump, it's the same thing. You're going to be landing on the toe and then the first wheel immediately. It's going to be basically simultaneous like that. So it'll be toe wheel and then glide out on the back wheels. Okay? Toe wheel and to the center so you glide out. If you stay up on the toe when you land, you'll be grinding the toe pick down like this, and you'll feel kind of off balance. You'll still be able to land, but you're going to be stopping up on the toe. So try to get that wheel down on the ground and glide out like a normal landing would. And the hardest thing to do on skates like this is spinning. And there really is a learning curve for learning how to spin on inline figure skates. The trick to this is you have to be on the front wheel and the pick at the same time, basically on this sweet spot right here, all right, and on an inside edge. So if you go into your spin and you hit way up on the toe and you try to spin on your toe, it's not going to spin very long, and you're going to feel it stop. If you try to spin on the front wheel without hitting the toe, you can do it, but it's a pretty unstable spot. So you want that toe to be touching, grazing the ground. Just like a scratch pin, the bottom toe pick will touch a little bit. You want that feeling when you're on this front wheel. If you rock back and hit the second wheel, the spin will stop. And if you catch an outside edge when you're trying to spin on the inside edge, you'll stop. So it's a very fine spot you have to find right up in here, this sweet spot. And it's a little further forward than you would feel on ice because the toe pick's a little bit higher. So practice these by doing 2-foot starts, almost like you're going to do a 2-foot spin, and then rock up to that left foot spot and feel it, see if you can find it. It's one of those things that once you feel it, you go, aha, I got it, I know where it's supposed to be, and you'll be able to hit it the next time. So keep practicing, just picking up the foot and feeling that like a 2-foot to 1-foot spin, so you feel that spinning a few times. Once you get the hang of that, you can go into it with a regular wind up, stepping in on an outside 3, bringing your leg around, and doing a scratch spin with your leg coming around. I do find in general that you have to be more aggressive with the PIC skates than you do with ice skates. They really are not going to handle wimpiness in what you're trying to do. You can't go into a 3-turn very timidly and try to make it turn. It has to have some edge going in, it has to have some aggressiveness, and you have to go for it. And the same thing with your jumps. You've got to be brave and you've got to go from 100%. If you do, it'll feel like the ice, you'll get confidence, and you will be able to do these jumps on them. I hope that helps. Please leave some comments on my Facebook page or direct message me if you have other questions. Thank you.